I am against it, but it's not for me to decide. Now, I respect the Islamic texts very dearly. And not only do I respect these Islamic texts extremely dearly, but there's also, we need to refer to the scholars. It's up to these Muslim scholars to define if stoning will be the appropriate sentence to give to a woman that may have been caught. Now, this man is invited on national TV still today. CBC gives him a voice. The Ottawa police invited him to be able to show a moderate view of Islam. And one of the main leaders that he promotes is Youssef Qaradawi, the main person that we just said here. In one of his books, Tariq Ramadan described Youssef Qaradawi as one of the main thinkers and the main ideologue of the Islamic movement. And the second thing that he said was he will never say a word against Youssef Qaradawi's teaching. And then there was a book of compilation of fatwas that was written, and it was the book of Youssef Qaradawi, and Youssef Qaradawi asked Tariq Ramadan to write the preface of the book. So I'll just share a little anecdote to you, a small victory. There was a journalist from the CBC, Radio Canada, that went to go interview Tariq Ramadan. And he met me right before, and he wanted to get my point of view, and I said, well, I'm not going to give you a sexy quote. The problem is, after this sexy quote, you're going to take only 3 seconds of what I'm saying, and he's going to lie most likely to you in your face, and I won't be able to explain why he lied. So I said, ask him 2 questions. Why did he preface Youssef Qaradawi's book, and how did he get here? It was at the time there was volcanic activity as in Iceland. So the journalist goes to meet Tariq Ramadan, and he asked him the 2 questions, and he answered to the book. He says, it was not a preface, it was a commentary. So this is how he's always slipping away from all these things. And the problem is he's always faced with people that haven't read his book, or that didn't make the effort to read who the ideologues he's done. So all this said, there's a couple of organizations in Canada that are very, very, very unique. Actually, we're very unique in all the Western world with our organization that are inspired by the Muslim Brotherhood, because we have an organization called the Muslim Association of Canada. And according to a Muslim Brotherhood monitoring website, very serious website, it's called the Global Muslim Brotherhood Daily Report. There's only 2 organizations in the world, or there might be only 2 organizations in the world who basically publicly associate on their own website with the Muslim Brotherhood. And on the MAC, in their own website, they basically, there's only the Hamas and the MAC, the Muslim Association of Canada. And the MAC declares that they follow the Islam the way the Islamic movement has evolved and culminated into its modern form through the Muslim Brotherhood. And then they said, and it was also inspired, we try to establish Islam as per understood by Allah and also through the understanding of the Imam Hassan al-Banna. This is still on their website right now as we're speaking. Now the MAC is an organization that is pan-Canadian that was worth 0 cents about 12 years ago. And it's very interesting because of the leadership of the MAC, a lot of the people who had the leadership of the MAC at different times, they overlap with other organizations, some of which lost their charity status, and one of which lost its charity status for funding the Hamas with $15 million. And so the Muslim Association of Canada is on Parliament Hill. They promote their activities, a very modern type of Islam, but they manage schools, day camp, they manage, scouts. So they manage these schools, and one of their schools in the Ottawa region called the Eberhard School was actually caught about 10 years ago because the teachers in that school were promoting, encouraging the kids to do works that were very anti-Semite, very, very racist work. How long do we have? Okay, So this is just an example of one of the schools that happened there, and the only thing that really happened to them was they got excused and the school is still running. And now remember, it's not the students that were doing these anti-Semitic, and when I say anti-Semitic, I mean calling for the death of Jews. When I say anti-Semitic, I mean, you know, hurting specifically Jews. Not exactly racist, but I would call it incitement. Now, free speech in the United States has a limit. The limit is incitement. Incitement fits in what a liberal democracy defines as coercion. However, we can usually, in a liberal democracy, we can say hate speech. We can promote an ideology. You can even promote fascism. The Mein Kampf, the German Hitler's own book, we're allowed to go borrow it at the library in order to understand what he was writing. But should we fund schools that promote the Mein Kampf? So the MAC now is worth between $20 and $30 million. Edmonton has become a hotbed of Muslim Brotherhood activities. Calgary also. There is now what we call in French une grappe, you know, the raisins with all these, they call it a grape, how do you call it? A cluster, that's it. A cluster of organizations. So, and they're known to do that. The Global Muslim Brotherhood Daily Report basically describes that what they do is they always start up new organizations, new centers, and these centers, when they have to create pressures towards the government to make themselves heard, they're going to say, look, we are all these organizations, sometimes many of which are one-person organizations. And they say, we are these 100 people, and we say that describing Irfan Canada as a promoter of terrorism is Islamophobic. So, and then the politicians that buy into that and bend backwards, and you know that we're one of the rare countries in the world where we have a right to vote in less than 3 years, because I've lived the 1995 referendum, and I can tell you from personal acquaintances that some people got their citizenship in less than 3 years. So if you're allowed to vote in less than 3 years and you're in your constituency, there's a lot of people that goes to the MAC-run schools. Well, you want to get elected. So you don't want to displease the people that could bring you a bank of votes. That's what's happening to France. That's what's happening to the United States. That's what's happening to Canada. So they run a lot of schools. So we, at Point Bascule, we basically also did a couple of reports. That's what we do. We do reports. And we've exposed another school called the Dar al-Imam School. And it was exposed. I worked with a journalist that did an investigation. The leader of this school, the principal of the school, was at the time the treasurer of the MAC. When he was the treasurer of the MAC transferred funds to Irfan Canada. So that was right before Irfan Canada got their status of charitable organization revoked. After this situation, he stayed there. Now the school, there was the first time there was a debate in a parliament in Canada about the Muslim Brotherhood was actually in Quebec. And a very, very right-wing, left-wing parliamentarian from the Parti Québécois, to our surprise, got up and asked a question to the Minister of the Education. And she basically asked, why are we funding a school that basically promotes anti-Western, anti-women, anti-gay, and anti-Semitic ideology? Now the Minister of Education, she says that there is no link between the MAC and the school, and they would never fund such a school, and anyway there was this whole denunciation of it. So anyway, I sent a couple of emails to this MP, and the next day she asked questions again. And then she says, I would like to restate my question. I'd like for you to know that the MAC is definitely linked with the school because the school's rights, it's on their own website. And then you can see it and you go what they call the business registry, and then you see all this overlapping between the administration of the Institute of School d'Aliment and the MAC. And then there's the MAC in Quebec. They also have their establishment, and it just so happened that the owner of the building where the school is located is also owned by the MAC. But they had an agreement, so once the funding came, they gave the building to the MAC. And you know that in the years 2000, real estate went up for a certain time, quite up. So this building that was built in construction, they didn't pay a dime for it. So now at the time they were receiving fundings of about $550,000 per the government of Quebec. It's a private school, but they were receiving that funding. So basically they're paying the rent, covering the building, and the MAC has all this added value, and the MAC is able to use the building for their administrative office at night and on weekend to be able to teach what was exposed at the Quebec Parliament. That is anti-women, anti-Semitic, anti-Western, and anti-gay ideologies. And of course, the irony is, in Quebec, they wanted to establish, they call it laïcité. I don't want to call it secularism, but laïcité, French-style laïcité. So in the forefront, you have this law, just like in France, who's going to say, you can't wear whatever you want in the public sphere. And at the same time, they're going to continue to fund these schools that are basically promoting wearing the veil and the burqa. In the same way that the Muslim Students Association of Concordia basically give funds and bursaries or grants to students who are newly convert in order to go study in none other places than Saudi Arabia to get a better understanding of Islam. So of course, most likely the beer was going to be pretty thick, and they're going to have a little more than a hijab when they're going to come back. So the MAC is one of the main infrastructure. They own schools also in Edmonton. They own centers